Right guys, so a bit of a update and I guess upgrade on my oil cooler setup that I did back when I first built this car. It wasn't the final product, it was basically built on a budget and also a time restriction, mainly budget. So since then I've actually got a whole heap of aeroflow goodies together and a nice big K&N filter, which I'll show you guys in a sec. And I'm going to basically get my oil filter away from where the factory location is, which is really close to my aftermarket equal length header, which I'll also show you guys soon if you haven't seen. And if you are interested in this build, there's a whole build series on this car, so I'll put a link to that playlist. Basically we're going to go to a remote oil cooler setup, or oil filter setup with a cooler. So I'll show you guys what I've got and then we'll get into installing it in the car. So this is what I've got. So this is the adapter for the oil filter. This takes I can't remember what size it is, I'll put it on the screen now after I research it. But basically it takes this big size K&N filter. So that's the part number if anyone's interested. So that's good. Always good to have extra oil supply. So yeah, that is this box. So yeah, that comes with an adapter, and then it's got -8, I think it was -8 O-ring bosses, so ORB fittings. So there is an in and an out, as you can see. Very important to get that right. So basically the out is the big hole and the in is the little holes. So if you get that wrong, you could be starving your engine from oil. So the next component is the actual sandwich plate, which goes where the regular oil filter goes. Nice bit of aeroflow billet goodness as well. This one, that is the part number for that one. So one thing that I always do is I get rid of the factory NBR regular rubber O-rings, and I go and buy myself some Viton equivalents. So that NBR rubber is absolute shit for oil, especially high temp and synthetic. I find that it really makes these quite plasticky and brittle. I'm sure a lot of you guys can vouch for that as well. So I always upgrade to these because they always start leaking, and as soon as you take it off or move it, that's basically game over. And if you're doing that on a night time or when the shop's closed, you're basically fucked unless you've got an O-ring set. So that goes onto the factory surface on the block, and then this comes and sits through it like that. And then it's actually a pretty tight fit, but that pushes through and then screws on the factory oil filter. And you also see they give you a variety of different thread adapters. So for my Subie M20, so that one screws in. So what I'll do, I'll chuck a little bit of Loctite 518 anaerobic on those threads into there, just to basically hold them in place. I'll also do the same to this fitting. I'll put that in there. I've already done that to these bad boys. These ones are already in place, so I always put a bit of anaerobic sealant on the threads as well. Just helps, just in case either of these O-rings fuck out, or it also kind of helps as it dries, it just locks it in, so when you're undoing the fittings it's a lot easier to get off. And also you can see it's an 1/8 inch NPT port, so I'll put my oil pressure sensor there. There's also 2 on the one for the block, which goes onto the oil filter factory place, so I might even put it there depending on the arrangement. So anyway, I've gone through and basically set this out and put some nutserts in the chassis rail to mount this, so I'll chuck the car up on the hoist and show you guys that. Alright, so you can see here, this is the mock-up that I've done. So that's all mounted up. Basically we're going to have 2 90-degree bends off that. One will go to the cooler and the other one will go back over to the sandwich plate, which we'll be putting on here. So that's all mocked up, a couple of nutserts in there, and just some nice Stano M8 bolts with some locking washers on them. So I suppose next up I'll pull the grill off, pull off one of those lines, and hopefully I'll be able to reuse it to go back under to the remote oil filter. Then I'll have to make another one up out of the hose I've got left and some of the fittings I've got left. New olives as well, so I'll chuck them in. And then basically get this bad boy mounted up in here. But for now we'll focus on running these lines. Alright, so it looks like I'll probably be right for hoses. I've just got to make one that goes from the relocation over to the sandwich plate. But I'm hoping I can basically use this hose here. That will stay in this spot here. And this one will basically route over this way and down. So I'm going to play around with them and I'll see you guys in a sec. Alright, some time has elapsed. I've done some shit and I'm pretty much done. So I'm pretty much ready to fill it up with oil. I'll show you guys the setup before I get the car down on the hoist and finish everything off. That's the cooler setup, pretty much the same as before. So I ended up being able to reuse that line. That went to pretty much the same spot. This one, that's a new line. Yeah, this line goes down and up to the inlet, and the outlet comes through, runs along here, and then over across, wrapped in heat shield to here. So I'm pretty sure I've got them hooked up right. So that's the inlet, that's outlet, yeah. Okay, cool. So that's good. Like I said before, it's absolutely crucial to make sure these are hooked up right, especially for a filter with a check valve in it, because you may actually starve your engine from oil. So there you go. Got my sensor in there for oil pressure, so I'll just got to basically bring this loom over the other side of the engine bay and put it in there, and that's pretty much it. I might make a bit of a template and cut some of this heat shielding and figure something here, kind of wrap it down around the back and cover up all this, and even like up under here or something. We'll see how I go, but that is basically the gist of that oil filter relocation. And yeah, not too obvious, obviously, because I'm shining a light on it and highlighting it, but I might actually use some of that heat shield or something else just to wrap around and kind of shield that just from dirt and dust. Well guys, I'm going to stitch this back up, drop some oil in it, get it all done, and go home, have a shower and have some dinner. So hope you guys like that. A bit of an expansion on my the first setup, which was still good. So be sure to check that video out if you haven't already. And like I said earlier, if you like this car and want to see more about it, there's plenty of videos on here, so hop on the channel and have a look. Alright, well I just finished up my heat shielding, so I figured I may as well add it in the video because I'm basically half an hour after I just finished it up. But there you go, you can see what I've done there. Nothing too crazy, but it will do the job. Basically just a hose clamp with some washers to hold the heat shield off the exhaust, because that will actually probably melt because it feels like some kind of alloy. And yeah, it's pretty sturdy really. All around there, protecting the collector, also shielding it from the relocation sandwich plate as well. And yeah, she should be pretty well heat proof. And one more thing, a lot of you may not know this, but one of my viewers pointed out to me when I did one of my other videos on this, that there's actually a dipstick length difference between the EJ20 and EJ25. So I've taken my EJ20 dipstick and put it on my EJ257 block and oil pan. Someone said it's about a 2-inch difference. I don't think it is, I think it's more like an inch. But basically what I did, I know that it takes about 4.3 litres. I put basically 4.4 in it, and then put the dipstick in, pulled it out, did it a couple of times, it was the same spot. It's basically at the top of the first twist. So now I know that is my full indicator. So helpful tip for any of you guys who aren't aware of that, because you don't want to be filling it up under or too much over. I'd rather go over, to be honest, but yeah.